Welcome, everyone. Sean and David back with you today. We're continuing our series of idealized theme parks. And today we are going to be covering EPCOT Center.
Yeah, we decided to not only cover Epcot, which was the second park at Walt Disney World, but we decided to also include, I think the name that we both agreed best fit at least our version of Epcot, and that is Epcot Center, which I think is a superior name anyway, but we decided to go with it.
There are a few different philosophies when it comes to Epcot. Epcot was the first non-Magic Kingdom style park that the company ever attempted to build. And in the early days, it had a very distinct identity as this sort of permanent World's Fair, trying to encapsulate the spirit of a few of the things that were going to be in Walt City. The idea was to educate and inspire you as well as entertain. And that's sort of the original philosophy. Now, there are some people who've never been quite as enthralled with that idea and think the park should maybe have more character-based stuff, more thrill rides, and that's sort of more the direction the park has moved in recent years. And there's the third school of thought in Epcot, which is, I really don't care. It's the park where I go to get drunk. So that's the final school of thought on Epcot.
All worthy schools of thought. But I think you and I both subscribe to the original one more so than the others. Not that we don't.
And you're going to see that reflected in the attraction choices we make as we take you around the park. For those new to the series, the long and the short of it is we're trying to combine the best of the past, present, and near future as far as things that have been announced and try to put together the best attractions roster possible. And something you and I are also keeping in mind is sort of some thematic consistency throughout as well.
Absolutely. That's the thing that we've both always agreed set Disney apart, and the reason that we're even talking about our employer during this unique situation we're in. And, we give a lot of weight to that when we're making our decisions.
Yeah, the theming was big, storytelling is big. Epcot's it's a different kind of storytelling, but it's always. I've been a huge fan of Epcot. My first visit to Walt Disney World was actually my favorite park, and the more I learn about the history, the more I kind of love the history of it, even if I don't necessarily love everything that they've been changing about it. But let's go around and see if we can take some of the best of the past, present, and future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I hope everybody enjoys it.
All right. So, you come to Epcot. Obviously, the first thing you talk about, the first thing you think about is Spaceship Earth.
Yeah. That's the thesis attraction almost of the park, and one that we have a very strong attachment to. There has been, was it 4 different versions of this now, and there soon to be a fifth?
There have been 4 different versions with a fifth that's supposed to come online in a couple of years. I don't know what the schedule is currently on that, but if you look at Epcot as a park, half of it is about futuristic technology, and the other half is about the global community. And Spaceship Earth is about communication, how technology has sort of brought people from around the world together. So that's sort of what makes it the thesis attraction. And even if you look at the structure, it's a technological representation of the Earth. I've always just loved this on a conceptual level when it comes to Spaceship Earth. Now, the first version only lasted a couple years, from 1982 to 1986. It was sponsored by the Bell System. When the Bell System got split up, AT&T, which was part of the Bell System, took over as sponsorship for the 1986 version, which featured Walter Cronkite as a narrator and added the song Tomorrow's Child. 1994, you had the version that was narrated by Jeremy Irons. Like a grand and miraculous spaceship. I can't do his voice justice.
Well, now does the narration of the Happily Ever After fireworks.
That's right. And then, of course, you may know him as the voice of Scar as well. And then since 2007, we've had the current version with Dame Judi Dench, which features those touch screens on the way down.
Yeah, and each one has brought something to the equation, but I think we both we decided when we were kind of making these decisions to go with the Walter Cronkite version. We just felt like it was the most complete, and as you mentioned, it has the original song. I'll let you talk a little bit more about that because I know you're a little more familiar with it than I am.
Yeah, well, if you look at Epcot kind of in the 80s and 90s, it got to a point where almost all of the signature attractions had a signature song. So we thought it was important to have the signature song, and certainly Walter Cronkite has a very iconic voice. One of the most prominent news anchors in the early days, certainly very appropriate to tell the story of the history of communications. And just looking at videos, looking at different things of it, it just seems to us that this was sort of the best iteration. This was if we had the idealized version, it'd be very close to this version. So we went with that 86 version. The new version of the attraction, which has been announced, is supposed to change the focus from communications to storytelling as the park shifts its focus in the future. But we're going sort of with the classic idea. So the 1986 to 1994, I believe those are the years. Forgive me if I'm wrong on one of those years, but it's approximately that time frame that we're sticking with on Spaceship Earth.
But I appreciate that they're at least keeping the attraction and not just closing it and replacing it. Because I think
gutting it with Stitch's Spaceship Earth, or well, you know, I don't know what IP you'd use in there, but it'd be no doubt some IP. I'm glad they're not going with that.
Yeah, same here. You know, and storytelling is still something that, you know, Walt Disney World's very built upon, but at the same time, I think for the theme park we are building, that version of Spaceship Earth was the best thesis attraction.
Yeah, we're very much conforming to that old idea, and our sections are still going to be Future World and World Showcase. The park is going to be changing soon. Really, I think World Center, World Discovery, and World Nature. But we're sticking kind of with the original Future World and World Showcase here. As far as the new version being about storytelling, I don't love it, but I don't hate it. So we'll see. We'll see what being like. It's not that much of a stretch to go from communications to storytelling.
Yeah, I agree, and who knows? Maybe they'll pull it off and it'll be excellent. But as of right now, based on what we know, we felt like this was the strongest version of Epcot that we can see or at least conceptualize. So,
yeah. Very, very important we go with Spaceship Earth, because just like it's the thesis for the actual park, where we go with that is sort of the thesis of where we're going with the direction on our idealized Epcot set.
I agree. So, continuing with that theme, I think we're going to go ahead and we'll talk about the other attraction there right around it. You know, and again, a couple of our options here for the area around Spaceship Earth were we could either do Interventions, which is very popular pavilions and setups that were there, and switching out different sponsors, switching out different exhibits, or we could go with the original, and this is what we decided to do, the Communicore, which kind of had a similar idea, but was more, I don't know, I feel like it was more in line with that original theme of Epcot.
And I think we're going largely with aesthetics here, because if you look at pictures of Communicore, they were these sort of wide open buildings and hallways with little sort of pits you'd step down into. It's very clean aesthetically. When they went with Interventions, that was sort of inspired by more of a consumer electronics show, so it was more darkened in these kind of dark spaces. I think Michael Eisner had gone to something at a convention center, so it has that kind of indoor convention center feel, whereas we're kind of going with those big structures with the big windows, with the little exhibits in between, kind of more open, more inviting, I think. Absolutely. And the exhibits, if we were doing this, obviously would be changed out periodically, just like they would for anything. And since it's idealized, we would keeping them up, not just say we're going to keep them up and then let it sit the same way for 20 years.
I don't know what you're talking about, Sean. And I think and again, I don't want to go too far into the what if category, but one of the original plans of Communicore was to put a people mover around it, and I think if we had that option, which we don't, we would definitely include that in our plan as well.
I would have loved to have seen a people mover there. You and I are trying to stick to the rules of we're only putting things that actually were there, but if you're ever inside parts of those buildings, you could look up and you could see where there was easily room for a people mover type track there. So I would have loved to have that. Big people mover fan. But
yeah, same here. So do you want to continue around the?
Yeah, we'll continue around. I mean, we'd also keep that Fountain of Nations in the middle. I think I have to specify that because it has now been deconstructed in the real world, but we'd certainly want that iconic fountain, probably before they added the stage to it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Although the stage, I think it was kind of a unique idea.
It was a unique idea, but it was only used for like one show very briefly, and aesthetically it kind of interrupted it for the rest of the time it was there. And if you also look at the way the Communicore / Interventions Plaza was in the early days, it had kind of these bodies of water around it that the fountain would flow into. So I think I definitely want to keep that there as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think it just looks. I mean, if anybody watching isn't familiar with that, go look up original pictures of that entrance area into Epcot. The water. I mean, I'm guessing it was paid over for crowd flow reasons, but it's just gorgeous, and it almost looks like a completely different park than it is now. And you know, obviously, if I had the choice, I'd set it back, but I know Disney's probably never going to go that
route. Yeah, consistently when you and I are talking about aesthetics, I think we're very getting very close to the 1980s original, because there was just certain beauty, if a certain industrial beauty, to the way it looked.
Absolutely, and yeah, I think it was just that perfect balance, of that futuristic, but also still having the beauty of nature there, that I think they kind of got away from there at the, in more recent years.
Yeah, particularly in that central area. And the fountain in front of Spaceship Earth, we'd probably go with that original acrylic as well, which I believe is actually making a comeback. So.
Yeah, and I one of the things that made me happy about the concept art of what's coming to Epcot, hopefully it still is coming, is it looked more like that original setup, which I thought was beautiful. Unfortunately, we're going to have a lot more security screenings and things that are preventing that great view from the parking lot that you used to get, but it's fact of life nowadays.
Yeah, but if you paid for one of those Leave a Legacy things, you're not going to do any better in our park than you will in the future version.
Yeah, sorry about that. Was it NSYNC's got one there? It's like, sorry guys. I know a few of my friends have them as well, but sorry, the tombstones, those just were not those just never sat well with me.
All right, so I guess let's make a clockwise rotation around Future World.
Sounds good.
The first thing we would come to what was originally the Universe of Energy Pavilion, continued to be called that, but was changed into the Ellen's Energy Adventure in the mid to late 90s. I can't remember if it was 96 or 97 that change happened, but it was around that time. And then in the future, it's going to become a Guardians of the Galaxy roller coaster. So those are kind of our three choices for that spot in the lower left corner of Future World.
And before we started filming, I'll let people know we had a long, lengthy discussion about this selection. I think we ended up deciding the same thing, but kind of for a little bit different reasons. For me, we both decided on Ellen's Energy Adventure. We both thought that was a wonderful attraction, very entertaining. It kept the theme of energy. It kept that whole what the pavilion was all about. But it was also did it in a very entertaining way. And, and honestly, I was always impressed that, like, for the 3 stars that were in that, playing themselves, Ellen, Bill Nye, and Alex Trebek, they stayed just as popular from the day they filmed it till the day they closed it. Those 3 still are very popular celebrities. The reason I chose this is I don't know enough about the Guardians attraction to really make a decision that could include that one in our park. I don't know how it's going to fit thematically with our park. It may do a great job. I know that they're going to try to kind of make it about Peter Quill going back to Epcot in the 80s and him visiting, and so maybe they'll tie it in a wonderful way. But without actually having experienced the attraction, I just didn't feel comfortable including it in our park. I know you felt a little differently about that.
Yeah,
you were more definitive.
Yeah, first I'll talk about, like, the original version of the Universe of Energy probably had a more impressive pre-show. And I absolutely love the theme song, but I think the Ellen version of the show was more entertaining. And that was one of my favorite attractions from the first time I visited Walt Disney World. And I miss it a lot, so it was very easy for me to include that. I'm probably a little more defiant than you in that while I think the Guardians attraction is going to be maybe objectively a better attraction, and it'll certainly wind up being more popular, to me, it does not fit with Epcot. I know they're trying to change what Epcot means, but because we're trying to keep that original concept, just to me, it doesn't have a place in that park, in that spot.
That's fair, and I can definitely see where you're coming from, and I may agree with you once I get a chance to experience the attraction for myself. But without knowing, I don't feel like I can definitively say it wouldn't fit. But you're probably right.
It may fit with the new concept they're trying to go with for Epcot, but because I'm very much attached to as close as we can get to the original ideal, just to me, I can't see it going there. But I'll admit that I am occasionally fallible, very occasionally.
Yeah, very very occasionally.
but despite slight differences in how definitive we are on that, we both agree we want the Ellen version. Maybe we can find the old Universe of Energy song to play somewhere else. Which, by the way, do you know that old Universe of Energy song from the original Epcot soundtrack?
I've listened to it because I have the soundtrack, but I can't say I know it very well.
Yeah. To me, it sounds almost perfectly like the type of music Peter Quill would listen to. So they'd be missing a big opportunity if they don't include that in the new version of the track, because it kind of really goes with that same type of sound a lot of the music from Guardians has. So.
Well, hopefully they do. But, I mean, it'd be a great opportunity to do it. And the Imagineers like to throw in homages to the old attractions, so I could see that happening.
I think that'd be the perfect homage to throw in there if they are going to do one. But be that as it may, we're going with Ellen's Energy Adventure, and we'll move on to the next pavilion, which has actually been an empty space for a long time. It was originally the Wonders of Life Pavilion. Then it was mostly unused except as a festival center, and now it's being redeveloped as the Play Pavilion.
Yeah, and I think we both agreed that the Play Pavilion, though it may be wonderful, and we're very happy to see something back in there as an attraction.
I'm really happy that something permanent is going to go in there after all these years.
Absolutely. We both, based on what we know about it, we didn't really feel like there was much of an attractions roster there, at least not one that we can kind of wrap our heads around without seeing it. So we decided to go with the original slate of attractions there, and in the
Wonders of Life.
Wonders of Life Pavilion. Sorry, I need more caffeine. So we went with.
I had 3 main attractions to it, all of which we would keep in operation because why wouldn't you? Of course, Body Wars was sort of the main attraction, simulator ride through the human body, same technology as Star Tours.
Yeah, and just a very cool, very unique attraction. It was actually my favorite Epcot attraction on my first visit back in 1996. That one and Maelstrom, so I'm, batting 1,000 here. And Horizons. Those were legitimately my 3 favorite attractions at Epcot.
And we're going to get to both of those before
So, yeah, unfortunately, current Epcot, I don't get to visit any of my original favorites. But we're going to have Body Wars. And then a very cool attraction that was actually the inspiration for Inside Out was Cranium Command.
I love that. Took you inside the brain of a almost teenage boy. What was he supposed to be in middle school?
Yeah, I think it was like middle school, early high school, but adolescent. Let's just say that.
Yeah, let's say adolescent is correct. And had animatronics. It had some famous actors in there from the time. Of course, you had the Hans and Franz from SNL being the heart.
Yeah. Very memorable and humorous portion of the show. I was very lucky on my college program. They opened up the pavilion one last time for that Christmas season. So I actually got to experience all these attractions one last time, the very last time they were open. I believe it closed for good on January 1st, 2007, I believe was the date.
It might have been January 2nd or 3rd, but it reopened for the holidays that year, and that was the last time the attractions ever reopened.
Yeah, and it took a lot to even get it open that time, because I remember my friends who worked at Epcot at the time said that pavilion was, because of course we were very curious about it, they kind of implied it was in no shape to ever reopen again, and then surprise, they cleaned it up last second and got it opened up, and I'm very glad they did, because I got to experience all those one last time. And then I
went to visit it on my first trip, because by the time I came back, it was already gone, or maybe it was seasonal operation, but I didn't come during the right season. And there was one final attraction in there, of course, that we're going to have, which is the Making of Me, which is a film where Martin Short kind of explains sex education to you, and it does feature Disney animated sperm. So we're not going to pass up an opportunity to have that in our park.
Absolutely not. So, I mean, I think, Sean, you were very big about a merchandise opportunity. No, I'm kidding.
We will discuss this off the air.
But yeah, I mean, it was actually a very, very, very well done video. If you have the chance, please look it up, because I really enjoyed it. It was very humorous, very educational, and only Disney could pull that off.
I never got to see that one in person. I think I was still like a teenager and too embarrassed to go in when I went on my first trip, and then I missed the opportunity. But I've subsequently seen it on YouTube and various other places. And the other thing you had inside the building were the fitness fairgrounds. They had some things. I think you could ride an exercise bike down Main Street at Disneyland. You get on the exercise bike, would show you a video. Very high technology at the time. Yeah,
I remember you could get all the way over to Splash Mountain at Disneyland, and for me, it was cool, like having an Easter egg of being able to go to Disneyland there at Epcot. So, of course, were those listed as attractions? I can't even remember, but sure, we'll have them back in our pavilion.
I don't. I mean, we would have it as opposed to not having it. I don't know.
Absolutely.
I don't know if they were an attraction or not, but that pretty much covers Wonders of Life. So we move on to the next spot. Which is going to go to something you were just referencing.
Yeah, for me, one of the greatest Epcot attractions ever made was Horizons. I absolutely loved it. It was, if you're not familiar with it, please go watch a ride through video. I had kind of a choose your own ending section there at the end. Very animatronic heavy, lots of cool show scenes, and I don't know, the optimism and everything of that attraction just really fit everything Epcot was about.
It very much encompassed the spirit of Future World. And again, it had these set pieces. It had the theme song. It had the concept. It was a suspended Omni Mover, which is something they really haven't revisited as a ride system. Even that to me is really cool. We had an Omni Mover suspended from the ceiling. I can't think of another example of them doing that anywhere else. Of course, what's currently in this space in the actual park is of course Mission Space, which I've always liked Mission Space. I'm not anti
same here.
Mission Space. I like both the Gary Sinise version and the current version. But for me, it's very easy to make the choice to go with Horizons, because that to me is so definitive of Future World, of EPCOT Center specifically, and the whole spirit of the park. So we definitely want Horizons in the park. That was a very easy decision for us to make.
Absolutely, which is, I mean, it was an easy decision in the sense that Horizons fits our park better. But I'm like you. Mission Space is still one of my favorite attractions.
I do love Mission Space, but I know I would love Horizons.
And I think if Mission Space hadn't been in the spot that Horizons was, it would have very easily made the cut. Because I think it actually does fit the theme of Epcot better than a lot of the attractions we did get rid of.
I certainly agree. To me, of the things they've added over the past 20 years, that's definitely very much in that mold. And I think there were other concepts for space pavilions going back to the early planning stages for EPCOT Center. It just didn't come to fruition until what was 2003.
Yeah, because 2003 it opened up, I believe. Yeah, and again, love the attraction, but come on, yeah, nothing's stopping Horizons.
Yeah. And I think you go to most Disney fans, unless they're specifically thrill ride fans, they're almost all going to tell you Horizons.
Yeah. So we're, of course, in that mold as well. And
anything else on Horizons before we?
No, just if you're not familiar with it, make yourself familiar with it, because it was a wonderful attraction and one that's sorely missed at the park.
As we continue around clockwise, our next decision was a really hard one, and you and I even went back and talked about it again just before we shot this. Deciding on this, because the original attraction in the space we're talking about is World of Motion, which was an animatronic dark ride with a lot of great Mark Davis visual gags through the history of transportation. World of Motion, just a really great dark ride, but of course it was replaced by the very popular Test Track attraction in 1999, which actually it experienced a lot of delays. I think it was really supposed to open late 96, early 97. It got delayed by about 2.5 years. And then, of course, there was a new iteration of Test Track, which opened in 2012, which has sort of the sim track, the current version of the attraction you think of, which has the RF readers, among other things. And I think if we were doing this in a vacuum, if we were only looking at this one attraction, you and I would definitely gravitate towards World of Motion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, anything heavy and animatronic, especially with Mark Davis working on it, I don't know. This one was a very tough decision.
It was really hard. What we wound up going with was Test Track, specifically the current version of Test Track, simply because we were trying to balance out the attraction roster, because we realized we were going with a lot of animatronic dark rides, a lot of Omni Movers. So we thought having the one thrill ride would kind of help bring some balance to the park. And I do feel the current version of Test Track, especially aesthetically, does fit better with Epcot than the previous version. Just sort of how everything looks, the neon, the old World of Motion signs. They even have the futuristic city in there, and it does try to kind of educate you about the process of creating a car and the different things you take into account. So in some ways, to me, it does very much feel like it's in that education with entertainment mold. So I'm going with Test Track, the current version, but I do have regrets. It is very hard to
I feel dirty making that decision, but like you said, we're trying to balance out the park, and as much as we may choose World of Motion, it just balancing out that roster. We got to have that at least one thrill ride in our park.
Yeah.
and we felt like this was the most justifiable one because obviously we weren't going to lose Horizons. So
because if we had to pick, it was either Mission Space over Horizons or Test Track over A World of Motion. So we made the tough call.
Or the future Guardians of the Galaxy over Universe of Energy.
So in the other two cases, we went with the Dark Ride. So we thought with this one, we're going to go with the Thrill Ride, and specifically the current version.
Yeah, but again, in a vacuum, we probably would have gone with World of Motion. But
this was the most painful call, probably. Maybe of this entire process.
Yeah, I think it was, because I really can't think of another one that we debated this much about it. Like, we were going back and forth on it, even like you said, even like a minute before we started filming.
You and I made these notes some time ago. And we went back and forth a bunch on it then, and we went again before we went to record. There's like, are we sure we don't want to go with World of Motion? And the truth is, we're still not sure, but we're saying Test Track.
Yeah, we're gonna go with that for now. So before we change our minds again, we should probably move on to the next one, which was not a controversial call at all.
No, next, very, very easy call. We're moving towards the Imagination Pavilion.
And I don't think there's I would be shocked. I mean, and again, there's been 3 different versions of this attraction. There was the original Journey into Imagination, and there was Journey into Your Imagination. Is that correct, or is that the third one?
Yeah, that was like the 1999 through 2000 version, which only featured Figment in a cameo.
Yeah, and was so unpopular that Disney changed it again
within 2 years, I want to say 3 years at the most.
Which, as you know, I mean, anybody watching this video that cares enough to get this far into it knows that Disney doesn't rehab attractions again that close after doing it. And it's Journey into, what is it? I forget the exact title now.
It's called Journey into Imagination with Figment is the official current version. But the original version featured the Dream Finder. It featured more animatronics, more elaborate backdrops. There was so much more to it, and the track itself was 1/3 longer. They chopped off about 1/3 of the track during that development. There was this big turntable where Dreamfinder would follow you on I don't know if it was called the Dream Machine or not, but follow you around on a turntable. That's gone. That's now where the loading area is. And it just they lost so much of that, and they lost obviously the whole character of the Dreamfinder, and even Figment was kind of a differently portrayed character there. They've kept him, but they haven't kept him. And then they put what's the current version of the ImageWorks onto the part where the track's gone. The original ImageWorks was upstairs, so we're of course going to have the original ImageWorks upstairs with that great rainbow neon tunnel.
Yeah, a very iconic early EPCOT. I know Michael Jackson filmed took a picture of that, a very famous picture there. And it was just, I don't know, that whole Imagination Pavilion, the original. I don't think I haven't met anybody who would take.
Yeah, who says, current version's better. You'd find even fewer people arguing for the Journey into Your Imagination. And this is no offense to Eric Idle as a person. I like a lot of Eric Idle.
Yeah. We're just debating the attraction here. I mean, if Eric Idle was, in the park, I'd be excited to see him. And frankly, I don't blame him for the quality of the attraction.
No, not at all. But we're cutting him out of the attraction. It had to be done. I'm sorry, not to.
And I haven't met a single person who would go with you. If you're that person, please. And again,
if you can tell us why, we're not saying that facetiously. If you can say I like the current version better, and this is why. I'd like to hear that simply because I've never heard it, and maybe there's something to it that I wouldn't consider. But for you and me, this like you said, one of the easiest calls we had to make is going back to the original. And of course, in addition to Journey into Imagination and the ImageWorks, there is one more attraction in this pavilion. You mentioned Michael Jackson earlier. I think it was pretty easy for you and me to go with Captain EO, a movie you can only describe as 80s-tastic, but you and I love it.
Yeah,
other options there would have been Magic Journeys, Honey, I Shrunk the Audience, or the current Disney Pixar Short Film Festival, which is basically just playing your Blu-ray on a big screen while you sit in the air conditioner.
Which again, there are some quality attractions there. Honey, I Shrunk the Audience definitely was very popular. But for me, I just love Captain EO. I just have to have it in my park. And I know that there is a large contingent of people out there, and I'm sure there's even people who've worked in the pavilion before who would say that it didn't pull in the numbers that some of the other attractions may have. But I can't
And
think.
some people really hate Captain EO, and I guess there is a issue there with Michael Jackson. But hey, we're not living in the real world. We're living in our idealized world where we can enjoy this without any implications.
Are you implying that he's a smooth criminal?
It was. So sometimes really, really bad.
Fair. But as far as the movie is concerned, gotta have Captain EO. Gotta have it.
Yeah, you got George Lucas involved. You got Francis Ford Coppola involved. Anyway, we won't go into too far into a Captain EO history lesson, but you and I love it. It's in our version. But I would accept the other 3D films. I'm not crazy about having the film festival in there. It's better than having nothing.
True, but I mean, you and I have seen, like you said, we could just throw in our Blu-rays and watch it anytime.
It's nothing you have to specifically go to a theme park for. So we're moving on to the land, and this has actually had a few different attractions over the years. Let's start with what was originally the signature attraction of the park, which was originally known as Listen to the Land, now known as Living with the Land.
Yeah.
And we went with something closer to the original version, Listen to the Land. Number one, it's another case where a great catchy theme song, first of all.
Yeah, and it was, and for seemingly, I mean, I'm sure there's legal reasons, but for seemingly no reason they cut it from the attraction, because it's not like there's much going on where the space where it was playing earlier. But, big loss. But
the other thing that was changed in the early 2000s, this was after they changed the name, but it was originally a spieling attraction with a live tour guide at the front, and that I always felt added a lot more life to it. To me, it's a little bit more monotonous, a little more dreary with the pre-recorded narration for the greenhouses. So we want to have that live spieling tour guide back.
And as you and I both who have worked and loved working at spieling attractions, anytime we can put a spieler back in, we're going to do it.
It adds life to an attraction that otherwise just kind of gets lacked with sort of canned audio. So we're going with something pretty close to the original version of Listen to the Land with a live spieler. So we go to the left side of the boat ride, and you get to what was originally Kitchen Cabaret.
Yeah, and then Food Rocks.
And then is now Soarin'
California, and then it was Soarin' around the world now. So, and again, I think this is one where if in a vacuum we would have chosen Soarin' over California. But I think because of our park and our theme, what we're trying to do in this park, we went with Soarin' Around the World.
Yeah, because that to me feels much more at home at EPCOT, whereas Soarin' over California, but much better fit for California Adventure. It's hard to lose a classic like Kitchen Cabaret and Food Rocks, but those were very much kind of products of their time. It's hard to lose those animatronics, but Soarin' is so popular, I can't say no to it. And I love Soarin'. It definitely fits in EPCOT to me. I don't know if it fits specifically that well with the land. I always thought when they were going to bring the Soarin' technology to EPCOT, they should have picked a country and gone Soarin' over that country in World Showcase. But that's a whole other topic. So we're gonna keep Soarin' Around the World here. With its 3 theaters for its higher capacity, and it's a highlight of any trip to EPCOT. I don't think you can not pick Soarin', some version of it.
Absolutely, and I think it's nice that with the Soarin' Around the World, it kind of, even though it's in Future World, it fits World Showcase. But if you had it in World Showcase, there's not really a good place to put it unless you're going to dedicate to one country. So the land is as good a place as any for flying around the world, which is very, very EPCOT in its theme. I don't love all the CGI.
I remember when Soarin' first debuted, people said it's sort of the modern version of what Circle Vision was. So that kind of tells you where it fits in with things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't love the CGI on the new Soarin' Around the World version, but we did feel it could fit our park the best, so that's where we went with it. And again, I think this would be in a vacuum or in a world where we don't have the version over at California Adventure, where I don't want to spoil things, but I think we both decided we were going to put the Soarin' over California there. We felt like since that attraction would still exist somewhere.
Food Rocks over there.
Yeah. Well, it never was in California.
Okay. Now that I've taken us off the rails, but yeah, we figure if we're going to have 2 versions of Soarin' in 2 different places, let's have each one fit its theme and have them be 2 separate films.
Absolutely. So
we got one more attraction, the theater, which is on the right-hand side, originally host to Symbiosis, then Circle of Life, and then very recently it was changed to Awesome Planet. All three films have sort of had a conservation theme to them. I actually saw Awesome Planet once before the parks closed, and I actually thought it was a really good fit for Epcot, which is something I don't necessarily say a lot about a lot of the newer developments. So I actually went with Awesome Planet here. You and I, when we originally made these notes, said Circle of Life because we hadn't seen the new film yet.
To be fair, it hadn't opened yet. So
yeah,
because we did this a little while back.
A while ago. Yeah.
And again, I haven't seen the new video. I liked Circle of Life in the sense that it had Timon and Pumbaa in it, so like I enjoyed them, but like really I had no strong opinions.
Conservation message pretty well. Interesting fact about that, it was actually animated at the Disney MGM Studios, the animated portion. So,
I didn't realize that. That's cool.
Nonetheless, we're gonna go with the new film. It has some in-theater effects, and it's a little bit more modern and maybe a little less depressing than Circle of Life was. I'll say in fairness, I haven't really looked at Symbiosis very closely, so maybe in some ways I'm not giving that one a fair shake.
If anybody's watching this and has a strong opinion about Symbiosis, or any of the films really, or really any of the attractions or choices we made, please let us know. We do welcome other opinions into this.
I love that discussion on this. I especially love Epcot because it's just so unique and has had such a history to it.
And I would love to find a Symbiosis fanboy or fangirl out there to tell us all about why it's wonderful, because I would appreciate that much passion behind it. So I think that pretty much closes the book on the land, if my notes are correct. So I think moving on to the next part of the park, and this one was a little tricky, but I think we kind of navigated through it. We went with the Living Seas, not the current version with Nemo and friends necessarily, because we wanted the original sea cabs, we wanted the hydrolators, we wanted that whole feel that the original Living Seas had.
The film with the deluge, like just that very epic feel and that futuristic approach to Seabase Alpha, which sort of felt more at home in Future World than perhaps Finding Nemo does.
And that being said, I don't dislike the Nemo version of the attraction, although I do regret that they cover up some of the aquarium. That's probably one of the reasons why we wanted the sea cabs to actually explore what was going on there. And we did keep one element, too, from... one last thing about the sea cabs that I want to cover. For those of you who are not familiar, the portion that on the current version of the attraction where you're going through the EAC with Crush, that actually covers up a view into the aquarium, which I just feel like is a very bewildering choice that the Imagineers made. I can't, for the life of me, imagine why they would cover up part of the at the time state-of-the-art aquarium to put up what essentially is just a tarp and a projector. I do like the ending where you do have the Finding Nemo fish look like they're in the tank with the actual fish, but I think if we're trying to educate people, it was a missed opportunity not to maybe be talking a little bit more about the fish from the perspective of the characters. You could have easily had Mr. Ray teaching you that kind of stuff along the ride, where it kind of becomes more of a Fantasyland type dark ride for most of it. Agreed. And I think if the whole attraction had been like the ending where they are in the tank and they had been teaching us, that would have been the greatest, greatest meld of the two. But unfortunately, that's not what we got, and not in our purpose of our discussion. We're only going with what was there. And I think you and I both agreed the sea cabs and the original.
Sea cabs and the hydrolators.
Yeah. Now, that being said, you and I both agreed that the Turtle Talk with Crush was a welcome addition into the Sea Lab or Seabase Alpha, and we decided to include that in include that theater there in the pavilion. Just the pavilion as a whole wouldn't be Nemo and Friends, but that being said, we would still have Turtle Talk with Crush there in our pavilion.
Yeah, because I think there is a way to use characters in Epcot when they sort of serve the purpose of telling the story. Of what we're trying to educate people about, and you can definitely use Turtle Talk to actually teach people about the ocean while having fun character stuff with him. So we managed to kept that in there, but for the most part went with what was previously there. Sorry, there's probably a cat tail in frame right now. I apologize for that. This is very unprofessional.
Yeah, God damn it, Sean. So I think, and again, I think this closes the book on Future World for us. That being said, some of the some of the announced attractions, like the Moana's like water area there, we just didn't really feel like we knew enough about it and what it was replacing, where it was going, what it was.
Yeah, like even where it's going, we don't really know a lot about that yet. So it's hard to know what'll actually wind up feeling like it would fit with our version of Epcot and what wouldn't.
So, and again, some of these attractions may be slam dunk. We want them in our park. Some of them may be like, we just don't feel like it was the right fit. Or some of them we would debate about, like World of Motion. We don't know, so we just didn't include them. It's not a slight on what those attractions may be. It's just, and if you're watching this a couple years from now and it's already open and it's wonderful, we're not saying it's not. We just don't know enough, so we just didn't include it.
And frankly, some of it we don't even know what's still going forward and what may have been canceled. So.
That's very, very true as well. So Sean, you ready to move on to our tour around the world?
Let's start drinking. I'm gonna get a tequila as we start, and then I wish I had the drinks from around the world for this. We'll just have to. We'll just talk about. We're gonna mostly focus on the attractions. The pavilions are the pavilions.
And absolutely, and I think one of those attractions that that we kind of miss and is kind of the in all of World Showcases, isn't just a specific one, was the omnibuses that would take you around.
That's right. That's something that's been largely forgotten from the early days. It would take you all around the World Showcase Laguna, double-decker omnibus, similar to what you have on Main Street USA.
And again, I think you and I put a lot of. This one was an easy one for us for two reasons. One, the aesthetics of just having the extra vehicles going around the park and just making it feel a little more special. And then also, the anytime we can add an attraction without subtracting one, I think you and I pretty much always kind of agreed that was the right thing to do. No offense, Magic Carpets of Aladdin.
Yeah, aside from the Magic Carpets, having more kinetics, as it's known, is good for the park. And again, having an extra attraction, you're not going to complain too much about that. I think we're not losing anything for it.
Absolutely, and I think as you hinted at with tequila, we're going to start in Mexico and kind of work our way that way around the park. Mexico has been one of those. I don't know. I've always really enjoyed it as a pavilion, both the food, the drinks, obviously, and then the attractions themselves. This one we have a little
because it's completely indoors.
Yeah, that's also nice. As most people know, it gets very warm here in Florida, and it rains, so having one indoors is very nice. And I think we had a little bit of debate about this one, but I think we both agreed that we actually really like the Grand Fiesta Tour that's currently there in the Mexico Pavilion. I know for myself, I'm a big Donald Duck fan, so having him in an attraction is awesome. And also, we really liked the three animatronics that are there at the end. The ones that we, as we mentioned in a prior video, have gone to 3 different theme parks and are now at EPCOT Center, our EPCOT Center. And we felt like, even though we liked El Rio de Tempo, we felt like that was the attraction we wanted in the Mexico Pavilion.
Yeah, the new version is entertaining. It has character-based stuff, but it still is about Mexico and showing you things throughout there. You're just sort of being guided through it by the characters. So we thought this is actually a good use of characters in Epcot, because there are places where you can use them. It's just it all comes down to how you use them, and we feel this was pretty good use of characters. Yeah. Still keeping a lot of the original intention, but adding a little more entertainment to it.
Absolutely, and it's a solid ride, and it doesn't usually have too much of a wait, but it's entertaining, it's fun, it's air conditioned, it's out of the elements, and I have no reason not to keep it in our park. So I think continuing on the World Showcase there, and continuing on with our boat ride theme.
Here's where the anger comes.
I think we both decided that, and again, for me, if this was in a vacuum, I might flip-flop on this one. But given where it is, what its intentions are, and what our intentions of Epcot were, I think it was a fairly easy choice to go with Maelstrom here. And that being said, I like the Frozen Ever After ride. I really do. I just don't feel like it's a good fit in World Showcase, and I never have.
That's exactly my problem. I think in a vacuum, objectively, Frozen Ever After is probably a better ride. However, when we're trying to go around the world here, it feels like you have a fictional country in the middle of all these, because Arendelle, it's like you have Mexico, you have Arendelle, you have China. One of these things is not like the other. It's very loosely inspired by Norway, but the connection to me has been tenuous at best. It just doesn't fit. If it was in Fantasyland, great dark ride.
Absolutely.
It's a little bit short, just like Maelstrom was. I mean, Maelstrom was always really weird. Let's not sit here and pretend that wasn't always a weird ride, but at least showed you some stuff about Norwegian mythology, and you had the film at the end, which again told you a little bit more about the country. It's more very much within the mission statement of Epcot, even if it was really weird.
I think you summed it up very well. And again, I love Frozen Ever After. I love Maelstrom, and for me, it was just very easy to go with the one that fit our park better. And again, if it was in a vacuum, I would probably go with the Frozen, but it is what it is.
Yeah, to me, I think some of our approach to this is we're looking at the parks as a full picture, and sometimes even if a small individual park might look better in a full picture, Maelstrom is better for Epcot or EPCOT Center.
So continuing on our trip around the world, we get to the China Pavilion, and I think you and I, even though we don't exactly know what the film is going to hold, we both felt like the upcoming China Circle Vision was the way we wanted to go with that, because for me anyway, since it's just a purely educational film, there's really no reason not to go with the most current version. And since there's a current version of the work that's, as you mentioned, was going to be more seamless, it was that we just felt like that was the way to go.
Yeah, it's going to use technology rather than having like 9 separate screens. I believe it's all going to be one big round screen, so you'll be much more immersed in it than you are with the other Circle Visions. So we're excited enough for that to say that's probably the one we should have there. The 2 previous versions were Wonders of China and more recently Reflections of China. I can't say I ever remember seeing the original, although I did like Reflections.
Yeah, and again, like, this is one where if somebody has a very strong opinion about one, please let us know, because I personally don't. I just kind of felt like it was probably best to go with the most updated version of this attraction. But if somebody's got a strong opinion, please tell us all about it, because I would love to know more about it.
There are passionate Circle Vision fans out there, actually. I would love to talk about it.
Yeah. So I think this one was a very easy one, because it hasn't changed too much since it opened. Was the American Adventure, which
that's one of my favorite things in all of Walt Disney World. I don't really consider myself a very patriotic person, but I love that show. It's just so well done. All those animatronic set pieces, the way they move in and out is incredible. Almost some of the unseen part of that is just as interesting as what you do see. The fact that like you don't see photographs until we're talking about the time of history where photographs were invented. There's just so much attention, and of course, because you love the swelling song at the end with Golden Dream. It's just all so good. So of course we're going to keep that as opposed to not having. We'll have the most modern version of the montage at the end because why not? Obviously, all our animatronics in our idealized version are going to be working as well as they were on day one. But
absolutely, and I love that attraction. I think I'm a little more sucker for patriotic stuff than you are. So for me, it was an easy. I mean, again, it wouldn't be replacing anything, so it'd be silly to get rid of it. But
I'm just going to say right now, if you don't love the show, you're a filthy commie. I
think that's fair.
You can at me on that.
Yeah, come at me. So I don't think there's anything more to say about American Adventure. I mean, really, it's as much of a slam dunk as anything can be. So moving on to France. To France, we have an upcoming attraction there that's almost done being built. Ratatouille: The Adventure. And again, I think this is one where had it replaced something, we might have had a little bit of debate about it. But since it's not replacing anything, there's really no reason not to have it.
It's taking up an empty plot of land, what was an empty plot of land between France and Morocco. So it's a trackless dark ride. That's certainly something we've experienced. It's always an impressive ride system. It was pretty well reviewed out in Paris. I don't love that it's a hugely character-based thing in the middle of World Showcase, but at least this one, unlike Frozen, actually takes place within Paris. Within the country we are trying to represent, rather than sort of having a very tenuous connection to it.
Absolutely. This wasn't inspired by France. This one actually takes place in France. So, I mean, it's much more. Yeah. I mean, for us, it makes all the difference, though. One is actually celebrating.
No joke.
I mean, when you're celebrating real-life countries, you want to have rides that take place or attractions that take place in real-life countries. So Arendelle versus Norway is a huge difference between France and France.
There you go. Boom, baby.
So, and
See,
again,
we're not contradicting ourselves.
yes, absolutely. And again, I think if for me, if Frozen took place in Norway specifically, like they said they were in Norway, I'd have my problems with that attraction would actually largely go away because it would be taking place in an actual country. Because I don't mind the characters being present. In fact, I feel like I personally have no problem with them using them. I just want them to do it in a way that fits with the thesis of the park.
Yeah, and the thing is, because we're not replacing anything, we can also have Impressions de France here. So we're also going to keep that. So we'll still have something in the pavilion that tells you, some more educational stuff, some more real stuff about the country itself. So we can have both.
Absolutely, and as much as it may be a little bit outdated of a film, it's a beautiful film, and it's got some great views of the country, and one of the more underrated attractions in the park, I feel.
Yeah, especially the music.
Yeah. Oh, music's excellent. So going from did you have anything else you want to say about France there, Sean?
No, I think that's it.
So going from actual France to French Canada, we got the Canadian pavilion.
So we've had 3 different versions of the film now, because we have the original O Canada, the 2007 Martin Short version, and now we have Canada Far and Wide.
And I'll be honest, I have not seen the new version, and the new version had not debuted when we originally did our notes for this. So I did talk to Sean because I kind of deferred to you because I know you've seen the new film. So
and I do like it. To me, it just felt like it was a little bit short. I don't know. I want to go see it again and give it a fair check out. And I'm not in any way saying it's bad, but I think when I really thought about it, I think I like the Martin Short version just a little bit better. The Martin Short O Canada that was 2007 until last year.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed the Martin Short version. I had no issue with that one. I know that I can't say I really remember the original one, although I know it had some good music with it. But you were saying it was a little more offensive to Canadians, a little more stereotypical.
Some of the things in there were considered Canadian stereotypes. I believe there was some controversy over that. I remember liking it. I didn't pick up on it at the time, but I was younger then, so that type of thing maybe wouldn't have occurred to me as much. All of them have had versions of the Canada Your Lifetime Journey song. So no matter what version we pick, I don't think we lose the song. I think they're slightly different versions of the song.
Right. So I think you and I both agreed the Martin Short version that premiered in, I believe, 2007 was the way to
for Epcot's 25th.
So, yeah, I mean, again, the nothing will actually beat the exterior of the theater, which is just gorgeous with the waterfalls and everything coming into it. Unfortunately, I don't think anything you could put in there will live up to the hype that is that that outside area and the quality of the outside area. That's true. I mean, but
I love it nonetheless. I love walking up to it. I love the lobby with all the woodwork and stuff in it, and
it's almost kind of a shame that there's really nothing you could put in that theater that would live up to that. But that being said, we're not going to or be upset about having a wonderful queue to walk through because it's just gorgeous. And so I think that actually wraps up our idealized Epcot Center. Sean, you got any final thoughts on this one?
I think we pretty much went through it. There is one thing we didn't talk about, and I think we probably do have to because it was in our Magic Kingdom one, which is what nighttime entertainment do we go with?
Yeah, and at this point, I don't see any reason we wouldn't go with Illuminations Reflections of Earth, though we hadn't talked about it in advance. Do you have any contradicting thoughts on that one?
I mean, I do really like Epcot Forever, but that's a temporary show, which is basically a placeholder for the new Harmonious, which I'm sure will be a spectacular show, but again, will probably be more character-based and a little less grounded in what Epcot's supposed to be. And I think I'm a sucker for hearing We Go On as I leave the park, so I guess I'm going to go with the most modern version of Illuminations that we had before the show ended.
Yeah, and again, I'm one who is actually okay with them replacing Illuminations. I know that's not necessarily a popular opinion, but for me, I wanted to see a new fireworks show in there, and I do like Epcot Forever, although it's a very temporary show, and they're in some place it kind of shows that it was kind of meant to be a placeholder.
Yeah, that does show. I mean, I love it, and I hope I I get to see it a couple more times before they bring in Harmonious. But yeah, I think Illuminations is the one to go. It is the more spectacular of the show, and again, it ends in that sort of, united world theme. What can we accomplish together, which I think is what EPCOT Center is all about. So
Absolutely, I think once we see Harmonious, we may go that direction. Again, we have to see it. Like I was ready for something to replace Illuminations, but at this point in time, Illuminations is the best fireworks show, nighttime spectacular they've had in the park, and I think you and I were on the same page with that one.
Yeah. So we'll keep that. I think there are probably other entertainment offerings throughout the years we could talk about, but really that's such a big history discussion of what would you have on each stage, so that I don't think we have time to go into it, and frankly would have to do some more research than we've done. So yeah. I think that's sort of our idealized version of EPCOT Center, really trying to look at the original spirit of what I've always thought is sort of Disney's most unique park. And I love the identity that it has. I love how different it was, and I think we were trying to hold on to some of those things that set it apart from other Disney parks, which again, some people love and some people hate. But I was very much in the love camp when it comes to EPCOT Center and everything it was supposed to be.
Absolutely, and I think the beautiful thing about Walt Disney World, as opposed to the other resorts around the world, is you have 4 parks. So really, if there's a park that doesn't really resonate with you, that you have 3 others and 2 water parks to go to. So that's the beautiful thing here. They can be a little more specialized in the parks and their themes.
And I think they should. I think each one really should feel different.
I agree.
That's why some personalities will gravitate more towards one than the other, and I think that's okay. But I don't have the business numbers to back that up.
Yeah, neither do I. And I don't even think Disney. I think other than some accountants at Disney, there's not a lot of us who do. We can only speculate. So I guess that wraps up our EPCOT Center video.
I really want to go to this park.
I do too.
Maybe more than any of the other idealized ones we did is this version of EPCOT Center.
Absolutely, I'd be really excited to go here, and I hope one day they can put in especially with Imagination. I think everybody loves that original version, and I hope one day we can get something close to that back in that space. I think the future of all of Disney's kind of up in the air right now, but hopefully one day we can get that back.
Yeah, it's interesting when they announced the new stuff. They really didn't address Imagination or Figment at all. So I got to wonder what stage those plans were at. But that's again a whole other level of speculation that we could spend an hour doing.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching. Appreciate any support, and for all of you.
Leave your comments. Let us know what your idealized version of EPCOT or EPCOT Center might look like. Just like last time, I had a ton of fun doing this, and hopefully we'll continue to cover some of the other parks in the future. We do have some plans for that, but again, if it's only you and me talking about this, I just really enjoy these discussions.
Absolutely. Same here.
So long, suckers.